Hi there, I'm Shamila, and over the past 10 years, I've had the honor of planning over 1,000 weddings. Yes, 1,000 unique love stories brought to life, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Helping brides prepare for one of the biggest days they'll ever have is something I'm truly passionate about. That's why I'm here, to guide you and share some of the best insider tips and make sure you're feeling confident and prepared every step of the way. If that sounds like what you need, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on any of my wedding planning advice. Let's make your big day as stress-free and magical as it should be. Now today we're tackling a question that I get asked all the time. What is the difference between a full wedding planner and a day of coordinator? It's a common misconception that these two roles are interchangeable, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard, Shamila, is there even a difference? Yes, the difference is huge. There's actually a huge difference between the two, and understanding that difference can help you decide which one makes the most sense for your wedding. So let's break it down. A wedding planner. A wedding planner is with you from the very beginning of the process. They're booked even before the venue if you're unsure of what venue you'd like, or if you've fallen in love with the venue, the first vendor you book immediately after. Think of your wedding planner as your right-hand woman, your best friend, and your confidant throughout the process. A wedding planner literally helps with everything, from finding a venue to budget management, helping you with wedding invitations, wedding website, all the details in between, right down to who's entering, what they're holding. Everything is going to be taken care of by your wedding planner. Here's a few details of what a wedding planner handles. Number 1, budget management. This is huge. From the get-go, we sit down with you to understand what it is that you want your wedding to look like. What are your priorities? What's your vision? And once we get a clear idea of what that's going to look like, we create a budget and we stick to it. Some brides and couples go into wedding planning without knowing exactly how much things cost. They're not really sure what's out there in the market, so my job is to create a budget based on our discussions of what your priorities are. For example, if you say that food and entertainment are the two most important things you care about, we're going to allot a smaller budget towards things like floral design. Versus a bride who wants heavy florals, heavy transformation in the room, we might suggest a more cost-effective venue so that it can be transformed with decor elements and florals and carpeting and draping, and we'll allot more towards that budget. We also want to make sure to provide a few vendor options within each vendor category, rather than just forcing you to go with one vendor. For example, for photo and video, rather than saying, hey, this is a great company, go with them, we want you to really understand what's out there and what would fit with your style. So we recommend about 3 to 4 recommendations within the pricing and within your style, so you kind of have a full understanding of what's out there in the market before you agree. Number 2, venue selection. This is probably the most overwhelming part of a wedding. For couples who haven't already fallen in love with the space when they get engaged, venues are the hardest thing to start with because there's so many options. There's hotels, there's venues, there's estates, wineries. There's just so much that goes into searching for a venue, and all venues are different. Some include tables and chairs, some are really bare bones, so it's really hard to kind of make a cost comparison without a planner holding your hand. Costs and venue selection can be so daunting that you want to have a wedding planner by your side for this, especially because planners are able to negotiate these contracts and compare them apples to apples. Number 3, vendor coordination. There are so many vendor partners that are involved with the wedding. When it comes to photo, video, DJ, lighting, hair, makeup, decor, rentals, there's so many things and so many people that need to work together on your wedding. So when you have a planner, they handle it all. You don't have to be talking to 5 different people. You just talk to your planner, explain what it is that you want, and they do all the work for you of gathering those quotes, negotiating rates, and putting together your contracts. Number 4, timeline creation. Every planner is creating a general agenda for your day, but a good planner is going to take the time to understand who's in your family, who's in your fiance's family, how does that affect entrances, speeches, pictures, breakdown of the detailed timeline for when the bride should be ready, when her friends should be ready, is there a first look? All of those details go into what your planner is going to create. Lastly, a good wedding planner is also going to work on everything related to wedding stationery. That includes your wedding website, invitations, signage, bar signs, menu tags, pretty much anything that's going to be guest facing at your wedding. That is going to be their main objective, to make sure everything looks cohesive, matches, and fits your aesthetic. One of the biggest things that you're going to find with hiring a wedding planner is how much time you're going to save. An average American wedding takes 200 to 500 hours to plan. Now imagine that for a a desi wedding. That's multiple events across multiple days and multiple weeks. So that's actually more than a full-time job if you actually break it down into 12-month period. Beyond the logistics, a wedding planner is there for your emotional support. I can't tell you how many times I've been the sounding board for brides who just needed someone to listen or a voice of reason when there's so many stressful decisions being made, especially when it comes to desi weddings, when there's just so many people involved. You have cousins, in-laws, parents, siblings, cousins of cousins, and aunties and uncles just giving you all this advice that you may not need. So as a wedding planner, I'm here to be your advocate and make sure I'll be your sounding board. A wedding planner can also help you save. Because they're with you from the beginning till the end, they're looking at all of your contracts and negotiating rates, and a good planner is going to help save you thousands. They know how to negotiate the rates. They know who the go-to vendors are to get rock bottom pricing rather than vendors who are going to upcharge you and try to play games. So when you hire a wedding planner, it is an investment, but you are going to save that money in the long run. At the end of the day, my job is to make sure your vision comes to life, and you can lean on us from start to finish, and that kind of support can make a world of a difference when it comes to wedding planning. Now that we've talked about what a planner does, let's talk about what a day of coordinator does. These roles are very different. The role of a day of coordinator is to come in towards the tail end of your wedding planning process to take over what you've planned as a bride. Typically, day of coordinators come in at the 4-week mark. Our company handles this slightly differently. I like to fully understand everything that's going on in your wedding, so we actually come in 8 weeks prior. But when that coordinator steps into the role, what they're doing is taking what you've planned and executing it. How do they execute? They understand who your vendors are and what role each of the vendors is providing. And then after that, they create a detailed timeline of exactly what is going on the day of your event. When are you getting ready? When does photo video arrive? Do you have a first look? Are you doing couples portraits? Who all is involved? Do you have bridesmaids? Do you have groomsmen? All those details are going to be put together by your day of coordinator. The other perk of having a day of coordinator is they typically do a site visit at your venue. So they understand fully of where things are going to go, how they're going to be laid out, and any personal items that you're providing like party favors, stationery, signage, they're going to be the ones to set it up on your behalf. So when you book your day of coordinator, the first thing they're going to do is go through your vendor contracts. So even if you have booked your DJ and lighting company, for example, you already have them booked, but have you already had discussions on what key moment songs should play? Probably not. So this is the time frame that the day of coordinator is going to step in to provide those details to all of your key vendors. So for example, the key moment songs, what are your must play songs? What are your do not play artists if you absolutely hate a certain artist? Those are the kind of details you talk to your vendors about closer to the date. Another example is if you've already booked your rentals, including napkins, you haven't really discussed details like how the napkins should be folded. So these are the smaller nitty-gritty details that you're going to really work out much closer to your event, about 2 to 6 weeks prior to your event. So that's why a day of coordinator is important, because even though you've planned and booked your major vendors, the detailing portion of it doesn't happen until much closer to your event. So what does a day of coordinator do on the day of the event? So no one can really step into the day of and fully understand what's going on, which is why they start a few weeks prior, or in our case, 8 weeks prior. But on the day of, their responsibility is to be your eyes and ears throughout the wedding and making sure that they're the point of contact when vendors arrive. No questions should be going to the bride or family members. The whole point of having a coordinator is for you and your family members to enjoy the process and be at ease. So your wedding coordinator will show up on the day of, serve as your main point of contact, and basically have a checklist of what to do. So things like packing up and setting up any of your personal items, things like a card box, party favors, place cards, stationery, your seating chart. That's all the role of a wedding coordinator. This is not something that you have to assign to your bridesmaids or your family. Hire a day of coordinator and they'll do all of that for you. Next, when it comes to vendors, you don't want to be sitting getting your hair and makeup done and then worrying about if vendors are arriving on time with all of the items that they promised. That is what your day of coordinator is going to be doing. They're going to be double checking that vendors arrive and anything that they had on their list of services is being provided. Next, they're going to make sure that the timeline is kept on track so nothing runs late. The whole point of having a day of coordinator to create your timeline is to make sure that all the moving parts when it comes to DJ, your officiant, your bridal party, your family, all of that is going to be managed by the day of coordinator, and rallying people over is what their job is going to be. Next, they're going to be a part of lining up everyone that's a part of the processional. So again, It's like herding cats, especially at a day wedding where there's so many people involved. That is what your day of coordinator is going to do. When it comes to the brat, they'll make sure that everyone is gathering where they're supposed to. When it comes to the bride's side, waiting to greet the groom's side, that is what your day of coordinator's job is going to be. They might also handle things that you might not even be aware of. Things like a mic check with your DJ and MC, practicing name pronunciations with the MC. These are small details that a good day of coordinator is going to make sure to do, so when entrances happen, there's no hiccups. They're also there just generally to troubleshoot any last minute issues. So if someone needs power or your photo booth vendor doesn't have the Wi-Fi, small things like that are definitely going to come up. But when you have a day of coordinator, those vendors have a contact to go to, and that contact should not be you as the bride on the day of the wedding. So again, a day of coordinator is going to be your eyes and ears on the day of your wedding, so you and your whole family can enjoy. And everything that we talked about a day of coordinator doing is something that your wedding planner is also going to execute on the day of. The main difference being that the wedding planner is there with you from the very beginning versus the day of coordinator steps into the role about 4 weeks, or in our case, 8 weeks in advance. You've worked so hard for so many months and spent a ton of money on this wedding. Invest in making sure that you get to enjoy everything that you've done and put together. Make sure you invest in yourself to have a stress-free day. At the very minimum, if your budget doesn't allow to hire a wedding planner, please, please, please hire a wedding coordinator. When I hear horror stories, the very first question I always ask is, do they have a wedding coordinator? And I would say 70% of the time, they don't, which makes so much sense why there's so many things that went wrong. But 30% of the time, they do shockingly have a coordinator, but it's just one that is not experienced. Do not do that to yourself. Hire someone who is experienced. Yes, you can gamble on a new wedding coordinator who just woke up one day and decided to call themselves a wedding coordinator, but they're not going to be there to problem solve and troubleshoot when you need it. So make sure after spending all this time planning your wedding, hire someone who knows what they're doing so you can make sure you invest in yourself and the event to make sure it turns out great. Invest in someone who is experienced so you can have the wedding of your dreams. So let's recap the key differences between the two roles. 1, a wedding planner is involved with you from start to finish, provides guidance throughout the entire wedding planning process, versus a day of coordinator who steps into the role about 4 to 8 weeks prior to your wedding and focuses slowly on the execution of the timeline of what you've already planned. But if you're confident in your planning skills and have the time and capacity to take it on, just having someone take over closer to the day of would work for you, and a day of coordinator might be all you need. Ultimately, the choice depends on your needs, your budget, and how much time you have to actually invest in planning. Again, remember, it takes 200 to 500 hours to plan one event. So either way, having a professional by your side can make the biggest difference to ensure that your wedding is going to be everything you've ever dreamed of. One thing is for sure, whether you've chosen to work with a wedding planner or work with a day of coordinator, our goal is ultimately the same. It's to make your day as smooth and joyful and as unforgettable as possible. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more wedding planning tips and advice. Until next time, happy planning!